You have found the Open Eclectic podcast, where Nate and Josh talk about everything from mobile games to books to pet peeves to cars to toys. Our interests run eclectic and we're open to more. Welcome to the Open Eclectic. Hey everyone, it's Josh with the Open Eclectic. Just wanted to give you a couple of notes about this episode. Nate and I originally recorded it quite a while ago when we had the idea for the original podcast, which was Week in Pop. Since then, we had a global pandemic and we realized that there were some things that we wanted to refine a little bit before moving forward with producing more episodes. However, we kind of like the content on this one, so we decided to share it as our first episode. So we do periodically reference Week in Pop. Pretend that doesn't exist. It's the Open Eclectic now. Enjoy.
So, we're going to start this thing talking for a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
How long have we been talking about this? Probably at least a week.
It's been longer than that. It's been like, I don't know, 6 months or something.
I'm like the Rain Man when it comes to time sometimes, but not in the good way where like I can recall the specific date, but like in the bad way that he's with money and he's like, how much would a brand new car cost, Ray? $1. $1. Well, how about a candy bar? $100.
I'm going to go ahead and say that your recollection of the time is not correct.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with you.
I've been kicking this idea around for a while that I'd wanted to do a podcast. Before we go any further, maybe we should introduce ourselves.
Sure.
That'd be good.
One of us is Josh and one of us is Nate.
That's right.
Who do you want to be tonight?
I think I'd like to be Josh tonight.
That was weird. I was going to say the same thing.
Nate might be kind of offended that nobody wanted to be him.
That's true.
I guess I'll be Nate. I'll be Nate tonight. So, there's a Nate and there's a Josh.
I'm
both
Josh.
Good friends.
Long time.
Josh. I'm Nate. Known each other for a long time. Good friend. Josh, you had said that there are dogs.
Dogs are toddlers.
Dogs are toddlers.
Which is why they're dumb.
This is why they're dumb and they enjoy repetitive things.
Yeah, and that's why they don't understand when you don't want to play, but they want to play. They can't understand why you don't want to play. And a cat is a teenager. That's why it's so freaking moody.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. Because like the cat, like teenagers, will usually don't want to hang out with you, but sometimes they do.
But only when they want to.
Yes, exactly. Only when they want to, and when they're done, they are done.
Then they claw you, much like teenagers.
They will claw, so that they might even like a little bit of a belly scratch. But if they're done, then you're going to lose your hand. Anyway, so we decided, our question was, are there any adult animals? You said?
Whales. Whales and dolphins are the only adult animals.
So I would agree with you on the whales. I think they're like really like mature and majestic and just like they seem wise.
Well, they're everything you want from an adult, really. Like they're very focused on their family and traveling around and kind of showing their offspring new things and just like hanging out, but like responsibly. Yep. You know, they like to have fun, but they like to be responsible too.
And like, they can be noisy, but I think for the most part, whales seem, when they sidle up next to your boat, when you're out in the ocean, which, I do that all the time. I don't know if you do. Go to the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah? You never hear the whales coming.
Nope, not in my boat.
Sometimes they sing, though. So anyway, so whales, I would agree. Dolphins, though, I think they're kind of like, they're not people, but like other animals, or like what's that animal that it's like a pufferfish or something, that they'll just like, they'll harass it, and it like,
to get high.
Puffs up, it like
right?
Makes them high, or gives it's like Viagra or something, or
yeah. So they're just like regular people.
Huh. Pufferfish.
Well, like, some people do things just for the sheer heck of it and because it feels good.
You're right. Yep.
And some people I know are also walking sphincters. But dolphins are also hyper playful,
which makes them fun.
Yeah.
And super smart.
Yeah, they're super smart. They're also super defensive. So like when whales give birth, they're super vulnerable. And dolphins, especially bottlenose, will actually help protect them from sharks.
Really?
Seriously, like sharks will come up to like attack, and the bottlenose dolphins, I think it's the bottlenose specifically, they'll come up and like joust the shark away and like ram into them to keep them from eating the whales in the offspring.
That's a real like animals being bro move, being bro. I don't. Do you frequent Reddit, or do you go to Reddit?
I've heard of this. Now I do occasionally. I'm actually so it's a little weird. Like it's one of those things that you would think I would live on, but I've only been using Reddit for like the last, in all seriousness, year.
Okay, I waste way too much time on it. It's probably a stereotypical thing, and also a product of sitting in front of a computer all day. At my job, live on the internet, research,
What's a good place to get information though? Like I had questions about, I had an issue with the post office recently. And so like, that's where I went to try and find a solution to the problem I was having.
Reddit can be a really great resource because it's a huge community and they have a real like very specific subreddits for pretty much any interest that you would have. There's being an IT guy or a help desk guy. My company called Service Desk. It's a great resource for tech issues because there's Windows subreddits, there's IT support subreddits, oftentimes I've found like doing a Google search for an issue, oftentimes a Reddit result will be one of the top like 5. So Reddit's pretty great. So anyway, my whole point with that was that there was an animals being bro, and that whole whale thing.
I'll have to check that out.
Total bro move.
I read that in a Steve Arrington book. He was a Navy diver, and then he worked with the Jacques Cousteau Society. And he wrote a couple of books about his adventures with Jacques Cousteau and the Jacques Cousteau Society. And that was one of the things that I remember reading that stuck out to me.
That's a real interesting fact.
Because I was like, yeah, like people, we should do that too, don't you think? I mean,
defend our
young from being eaten.
Our young and our pregnant, wives and girlfriends, whatever, from sharks.
From sharks, specifically from sharks.
If you're giving water birth, I guess that may be.
Well, that's why my wife and I did not do a water birth.
Stay away from the bathtub; they might be sharks. We could just ramble on about stuff for a long time, which I have a big tendency to do.
What? I'm quite certain you will never hear me ramble on about anything ever.
My suggestion for an adult animal, I said treebeard. Now, I don't know if are they animals or they're beings. Very adult. They're like the okay boomer like thing of Lord of the Rings. Because they're
the boomers of Lord of the Rings.
Because they're just like they're just
I always enjoyed
stubborn.
walking south. Makes me feel like I was going downhill somehow.
They're really they're real suspicious at the beginning.
They don't like change.
They don't like change.
They're convinced that their generation and activities are the best.
Is the best, and yes, I think we've really stumbled onto something. Now, tying back into Reddit, there's Lord of the Rings subreddits and Tolkien subreddits. We should totally
don't get me started.
Present this.
See, I haven't even looked for like nerd stuff / geek stuff on Reddit.
Full of it.
And I'm actually a little bit scared to because I'm pretty sure that's a rabbit hole I could fall into. Like when I discovered the Munchkin forums, for example, which are like if you have a question about like how cards work together, you can ask it in their forums, and the employees will give you like an official answer and be like, this is our official answer and it's tournament valid.
What?
Yeah, so it's like serious. And I read, not to brag or anything, but I've probably read every word on that forum.
Yeah, I've read every single word on that forum.
Which maybe isn't really a brag.
There's probably a Munchkin subreddit. In fact, I would
be.
guarantee Munchkin subreddit. I haven't looked, but anything you can think of, there's probably a subreddit for it. And if there isn't, by some small chance, then you should probably just start it yourself because there's probably other people looking for it.
Well, that'd be a service, I think. at that point. That'd be a service that I would provide if there was a topic I
Yep.
had something about.
I think so.
Actually, I did do a little nerd digging on there, or
Okay.
geek digging, if that's your preference.
Geek digging?
Yeah,
Okay.
so like, I've never played like Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
I haven't done it. It's on my list of things that I want to do. But as I started researching D&D, I found something called GURPS, which
What the hell is a GURP?
GURPS,
Okay.
Generic Universal Role Playing System.
Oh.
Okay.
Got
And
it.
it's meant so that it's hyper flexible, and you can make any kind of, so they say, you can make any sort of storytelling function within this system.
Okay.
Like, if you want to do a GURP based in the John Wick universe, you can do that. If you want to do a prehistoric steampunk dinosaur romantic fantasy game, you could do that.
I'd play that.
I mean, I would too. But so I've never played those games. I've
Okay.
wanted to for a while, but then as I started looking at the systems, I realized this is like a very maybe dangerous ground to start like judging a system before I've played it. But there's tons of information on YouTube, at least, about D&D. I kind of decided I don't like the mechanics of the game.
Of D&D.
Yeah.
But you haven't played it yet.
I know. So I started like writing my own mechanics for how I think an RPG should work.
Okay.
So that is the one thing that I found on Reddit and that I started researching a little bit because I wanted to look for multiple dice systems for how
Okay.
it works.
Dice?
Yeah. So
Okay.
like D&D uses a D20, but the downside to that means that
They use all kinds of dice.
They do, but like the core system,
Like your main rolls are going to be
yeah,
like
that's what I mean.
initiative rolls, attack.
Yeah.
Loyal listeners, I just started playing D&D a few months ago, so you might hear me throw out some of the lingo, just so I trying to sound like I know what I'm talking about. By the way, there is a Munchkin subreddit. I just pulled it up here. There are 7.1 thousand members, 20 people online. The last post was 13 hours ago.
Ooh.
It's called Munchkin Quacked Quest. Who has played it?
Ooh. I actually have not played that one.
So you haven't played that yet?
No. I love Munchkin's actually what got me into wanting to do the role playing game. Because
I mean, 'cause that's
yeah, Munchkin's like it's like role playing light.
okay.
You are your character, you get gear, you kill monsters to go up levels, you explore
It's just
dungeons.
It's like it's like light, or it's like all in one package. It's just like
Yeah, it's like if
it's in a box. You can like a single contained like campaign that you can just run with. What
Yeah.
is it like?
and you could
3 people is a minimum.
I mean, it's doable with 2. It's definitely more fun with 3 to 6. Although I did play one game where I was teaching like 6 people how to play, and there were 15 of us playing all at once.
Wow.
I do not recommend.
That sounds like it would take forever
It did.
because you'd have like these debates on
Well,
is
for
this
that
legal,
game,
is this not, and then you got to go through. People have to decide how to do things. It's like that would almost take as long as like a marathon D&D session.
yeah,
I mean, that's one of the cool things about Munchkin is that the games, like you're saying, it's light, or it's like D&D light, and it's like self-contained. You could play through, a quote unquote campaign, in like an hour or 2 hours or whatever. Whereas
Yeah.
D&D, you play 2 hours and you've barely made it out of the town that you started the day. So that's
Yeah.
D&D is like long haul. You're in it for a long time. I just started in it. I'm still not quite sure exactly how I feel about it, but I'm at the point now where I'd feel bad if I said I didn't want to play because my friends at work are the guys I'm playing with there. So,
yeah.
how about why don't we? I don't know. I'm really liking this discussion that we're having right now. We did have a little bit of material that we wanted to do for our intro episode here. We haven't even told people what the title of this is.
No.
My thought, what I wanted it, and we thought would be a cool title, is called the Week in Pop. I think there's like some Australian magazine or something that might be called Week in Pop, but they probably don't care if we podcast called that.
Just to be clear, it's like the week, like a work week in pop, not like we're really weak in
Like,
soda.
yeah. No, we would probably want to say we're strong in pop.
Yeah.
like pop is one of our strengths, like our abilities. If this is D&D, strong and soda.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It'd be like crit 20s all the way. Nat 20s all the way.
Nat 20 in Dip Mountain Dew.
Critical. Sorry, I watched a Geek and Sundry, which is a great place to learn all kinds of stuff about D&D, and they had one where Vin Diesel was on, who's like a huge D&D player and has played like his whole life.
Really? I
And
think I'd heard that.
he rolls 2 nat 20s like consecutively, or within like, I don't know, like a turn or two. It's the most ridiculous. It was the most ridiculous thing.
Is that who's that guy who was in Magic Mike? He was
Channing Tatum?
No, see, one of the other guys. His name's like Joe. I have the internet right here.
Yeah, no, Joe Montagna.
It's Joe Manganiello.
Yeah, isn't that not what I said?
Yeah, this is basic.
It's probably who I meant.
Yeah, that's what you meant.
The name I was trying to pronounce is the guy who was he's presently in Criminal Minds. He's an actor. He's in Godfather 3.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
The other Joe. There's an episode of that D&D celebrity thing where they have Terry Crews come on and play. I haven't watched that one yet.
He's like a budding geek. Apparently, he just got into PC gaming, like building his own PC and stuff, which is really cool because Terry Crews is like
the bomb,
dude, the bomb. And I haven't watched what's the show that he's in, right?
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I have not watched that show,
dude. Okay, so I had a friend she was like, you have to watch this, and I was like, I saw the first episode. I don't know. I'm like, no, seriously, give it one more chance. And I'm notoriously harsh on TV shows.
Okay.
Like, I had a bad experience where I had a group of friends who recommended a show, and then I watched it for a whole season, and it was just garbage.
What show was that?
Arrow.
That's a CW show. So that's where you went wrong. It was on CW.
I know. I love Green Arrow, and I love it. I can't even talk about it. It had so much possibility. And those of you who recommended that show to me, and you know who you are because we've talked about this, I'm still a little hurt by it. Anyway, so I'm really careful about that. I'm like really harsh on TV shows now. And they're like, seriously, watch the second episode. If you don't like it after that, I'll never talk to you about it again. And now I'm like, I think I'm into season 2 now.
Okay.
So it's worth watching. It's pretty funny.
Okay. I've heard it's good.
Maybe the podcast should be called Crazy Train because we're going off the rails.
We are off the rails. Another show.
For anybody who doesn't know, that guy who did that song with Post Malone, you may have heard of him, Ozzy Osbourne. Anyway, that's his song. It's Crazy Train.
Yeah, who's this Ozzy Osbourne guy? He's pretty good.
He's gonna be so famous now.
Or what was the other one? Like, man, who's that guy? Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney.
God, is he on like American Idol or something?
Yeah.
Kids.
Right.
So The League's another show that's been recommended to me by multiple people.
Have you not watched The League?
What's funny is that people who've recommended it to me the most like passionately have been people who aren't really big sports fans.
That would be me. Yes.
You, and then also my friend John at work also says you should watch The League.
It's hilarious. So you don't have to be a sports fan. Here's the thing though about sports fans.
It's about fantasy football, right?
Yeah. Like there was a time, children listening to us in the future where everything is completely egalitarian. There was a time in our history where sports were considered acceptable. And if you were a D&D fan or any sort of geek culture type of guy, that was like looked down upon, and nerd was a bad word. But realistically, like people who are football fans, they're just nerds of a different sort. When you can tell me your team's history and like the players and how good they are and that sort of thing, that's not any different than me telling you that like I'm a big fan of James Arnold Taylor, who's a voice actor on Clone Wars and a bunch of other animated stuff, and that sort of thing. And like,
see, I have no idea.
And that's cool. You don't have to.
And that's a good point. Is that a theme in the League in the show at all? Or
no, it's not. But I appreciate it because I recognize it's like
the passion, right?
Game recognized game. Like,
yep.
Those guys on that show are nerds for football and for playing fantasy football specifically. And I like playing games. So like I super appreciate that concept of like fantasy football and doing that. And it's not about the football, it's about their friendship. And the mechanic that moves the story along is fantasy football and then football, of course, behind that.
Yeah,
so,
I need to watch.
If you get a chance, like just check out the first couple episodes. I did stop watching at one point. There was a point where I got bogged down. I was like, couldn't keep track of all the shows I was watching. So that one didn't make the cut, but not because it wasn't good, just because that's how it went. I'll resume it again one day.
That's a really, you're absolutely right about that. And like to play fantasy sports, like for real, not just watch a show about it, but like you don't have to really know anything about the sport to play fantasy sports, because you look at the numbers and it's like, I mean, just on a real basic level, it's just like who has better numbers, who's got more of this statistic, who's.
And sometimes it's like who you want to gamble on. So I don't follow football, as you know, Nate.
I do know that, yes.
Yeah. But one time I did, but I don't on a regular basis. But I have played fantasy football like twice or maybe 3 times.
Yeah, I think I was in your league at least for 2 years.
Yeah. And I think the first year I played, I won.
Yep.
And that was kind of cool. And then I didn't win the next 2 years, but that was fine. Like it was fun to like,
it's fun to watch the matchups and like, or to do the draft is fun. However you do it, like a live online, live in person,
the drafting was really fun. I actually enjoyed the drafting a lot.
Yeah. Like you can make it like an event, like, or it can just be like not a big thing at all. Like you can auto pick everything. I mean, however you want to do it. And you don't have to be a fan of sports to play the fantasy sports. I mean, it helps, but that's not the main.
I think the one year I did it where you didn't play on my league was a year where we capped, like you couldn't pick people that were above a certain like ranking. So you couldn't have like the really good players. So nobody had like I almost said Joe Montana.
Okay, how about Tom Brady?
Nobody could have like Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers.
That's an interesting.
This was a couple years ago.
I feel like it'd be a real frustrating rule. So basically, you had to pick like the mediocre players.
Yeah, because then it was really
a little more challenging that way.
Challenging, yeah, and the overall score was lower.
The field a little bit.
Yeah, it really did, because it really forced the players. It didn't change anything for me. It was still just like, ma'am, you got a cool name. But like for my brother Eli, like he follows football. Right. And so he was like, ooh, okay, no, I don't want this guy because, although he's ranked here in the fantasy league, he's going to shank it when he does this and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if shank is a football term. That might be golf only.
Kickers.
Yeah, there you go.
Shank things, yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of shanks.
Shank kick.
I guess if somebody gets stabbed in the shower, that's probably a shank too.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully that wouldn't happen in a locker room, but stranger things have happened.
I don't know if that affects your league playing or not, but
what? What?
I don't know.
Is there shanking in the league?
I think there should be a bonus if like one of your players gets shanked in the shower. You should be like, oh, dude, that sucks. You know what? 20 points for you. Or
well, there was a guy who got whacked in the head with his own helmet this last week. Big news in the NFL. Mason Rudolph, the quarterback of the Steelers, got into a tussle with Myles Garrett on the Cleveland Browns. Then Garrett pulled Rudolph's helmet off, and then they were, kind of pushing and shoving, and then he swung the helmet like almost like windmill style and brought it down on the guy's head. It
that sounds terrible.
It didn't like make him bleed or anything, and he was like wasn't knocked out, but it's like now it's this whole big thing, and Myles Garrett is claiming there was a racial element at play, that the quarterback, the white quarterback, said a racial epithet to Garrett when he, before this all happened. Garrett Black, he claimed that happened, so maybe that was part of why he retaliated. But I don't. That's what he says. I don't. The league says there's no evidence of it. I don't know. But anyway, again,
Sounds hard to prove.
crazy train. Off the
Sounds hard to
rails.
prove.
Yeah, I don't know if there's audio of it or not, but
For the record, I'm not a lawyer, but I've read a lot of John Grisham books, so I
Okay.
just feel like that would not hold up in court.
I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express a few times. Well, and I've read some John Grisham. There's I don't know if you've seen this term. Speaking of not being a lawyer, I see this pop up on Reddit. It's a abbreviation for I am not a lawyer. But it's funny is it's I anal. So if you see that in Reddit when you start browsing it, it doesn't mean people are.
Doesn't mean what you think it means.
It doesn't indicate their.
Is there a glossary of
proclivities.
terms? Is there a Reddit page for like a glossary of terms that people use? Because that would be really handy. Like if you're
Maybe.
browsing a new Reddit that you're unfamiliar with and you see something weird and you're like, huh.
I don't know. I bet there probably is. I've not found it. There are, there's certain subreddits I think that lend themselves more to like specific terms or abbreviations. Like one in particular, which I don't subscribe to anymore, is called "Raised by Narcissists." But they'll do this stuff like not unlike like motherhood or parenting forums where they'll have like that threw me off when I saw it when I was reading stuff when Eric was a newborn. He would read things on these like family mother websites, and it would be like my DS and my DH were are the greatest, but I just don't know what to do. So I'm like, what? I'm like Nintendo.
I can't think of anything
designated
appropriate,
hitter,
right?
So DS is like dear son,
Dear son.
DH dear husband.
Huh.
It's whatever. It's their. I don't know. It's their thing. So this Raised by Narcissist one has stuff about, they'll say like N mom or N dad, like narcissist mom. So there's certain subreddits that certainly have very specific things like that, but most of them that I have come across and like the real popular main page ones don't really seem to have a lot of that stuff. But I'm sure you could find that.
Yeah, no doubt.
Anyway, so
No doubt. So, speaking of this week in like pop culture, should we talk about Ford versus Ferrari?
sure, yeah.
First, let me ask you this: how would you categorize that movie?
Like what kind of movie? Is
Yeah,
it,
like let's
or-
pretend you had a deeply detailed Rolodex of movie genres and subgenres. Where does this fall for you?
This one would almost be like it almost is like one of those like kind of feel good, like based on a true story, kind of like a Remember the Titans almost kind of thing. Not
Yeah.
like it's not a Disney movie. It's not like it doesn't have that little Disney charm or flair. I mean, and it's
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say it's like a really like feel good necessarily, but I mean it's like
Would you
it's
say
not like a corny movie, and it's not like a guilty pleasure type of movie.
True.
It was a good film.
Yeah.
I mean it's about auto racing, car racing.
Does it count as a biopic, or if you're one of those people, a biopic?
What's the right way to say that?
I have no idea.
Biopic?
I say biopic because it's biography. It's biographical picture. Is
Yeah,
how
I was when I hear it in my head, I'm like biopic. Who always made me feel like I wasn't very smart? Daniel, our friend Daniel. He's a smart guy.
He's a very smart guy.
Very smart guy.
Very smart guy. And he
Loyal listeners may or may not know him, probably don't, but Daniel's a cool guy. Very smart. But so Ford versus Ferrari is about Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles and Ford.
Henry Ford
versus,
the
surprise, Ferrari.
second. What?
Yeah, Henry Ford, Henry the Deuce.
Yeah.
So it's about Ford's journey, mission, whatever, to beat Ferrari in Le Mans.
And they wanted to beat Ferrari in Le Mans because Ferrari was notorious for winning, number one.
Yep.
But also because they wanted their cars to not seem boring to a generation of young people who actually had money to spend on cars. And they wanted their cars to be, appealing and attractive to those young people. And they thought...
Sexy, fun.
Yeah.
Not just
like
family haulers
Yeah.
or whatever.
They wanted Ford to be associated with fast.
So yeah, that was in the movie anyway. That was Lee Iacocca's presentation. That was the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they wanted Ford to be synonymous with that and then with racing, success and that kind of stuff.
That's kind of a so like aside from the obvious car connotations, which we'll get to in a moment, that was kind of like one of the coolest parts of that movie to me is when Iacocca stands up, who's the marketing manager, or I think he's their communications person. I don't know what his title was in the movie right now. But Ford's looking for ideas, and he has this idea that he pitches, and everybody's like, yeah, well, you've been in charge of like our worst slump in the company's history, and they're giving him grief because it's an idea that they and really nobody had heard of before. Like at that time, race cars were race cars, and Ford was family cars, and Chevy was family cars, and yeah, they kind of had like was the Mustang out at that time? I know it came out really close to
like
that
65 or 64 and a half, maybe.
Yeah,
and so that was right around when the Mustang came out. Yeah. Yeah.
So he had this idea to like diversify, basically, and that to me was kind of cool because nobody else believed in this idea. Really, he had to push it and sell it and work it so hard. And that's just, I was like, man, even though he had like a comfortable spot and he could have just kind of drifted along with Ford, he was, he was hustling. I don't think his character, at least in the movie, got enough credit. Although it's really hard because really the movie is mainly about Carroll Shelby and Miles.
And
Miles. I can't remember his last name right now.
Ken
Miles. Yeah. So that was... Anyway, that was like just a...
Yeah, I feel like Iacocca was painted as like he was kind of shackled by his corporate responsibilities or whatever, but he was like the good guy kind of in the corporate world, whereas Josh Lucas's... Is it Leo Beebe?
Beebe, yeah, something Beebe.
That guy was... He was a straight up like villain in this movie, which I was reading about the movie afterward, reading of the movie after we saw it. You and I, Josh, and your dad, and our friend JD went and saw the movie on Tuesday. Of course they kind of put that Hollywood shine on the story.
Yeah,
and so they had to come up with with the antagonist and kind of play it up.
Movie needs a villain.
Yeah. So I think they really overdid BB because it seemed like he was almost like over the top, like just laying it on thick. The entire
he's skeezy,
movie,
right?
Very skeezy,
slimy. Just represents everything bad about corporate, not just America. I think anywhere.
He was like the most like fake, just
out for himself.
Like no empathy, no remorse, no nothing. Just ruthless.
He wasn't even acting, from my perspective, he wasn't even acting in like the best interest of the Ford Motor Company either. He was acting in best interest for himself to try and consolidate his own power and standing in the company.
Well, and I feel like he was in the movie. He was painted as like a real like sycophant of Ford, like Henry Ford the second, because he was just sucking up to the guy, like especially after. So spoiler, Ford attempted to buy Ferrari. This was kind of initially part of their plan to get into racing. Was they wanted to kind of Ferrari was like on the verge of bankruptcy, and they were gonna swoop in and rescue them, and then kind of take advantage of their racing program. But Ferrari turned them down.
They wanted to be the parent company in the same way that like Disney is to Lucasfilm or ABC.
Right. Yep.
Or Miramax.
So they could take credit for all the Ferrari's success then.
Yeah.
Subsequently. But yeah, just in that meeting they were having it back at their headquarters after they all came back from Italy. Yeah, like BB was just like he was just totally sucking up, like telling Ford not what he wanted to hear, but like almost kind of like trying to make himself seem good because he was like
Well, they really summed up his character when whenever BB Josh Lucas would speak to the press, he was like, "Yeah, we're doing this experimental thing to win at Le Mans, and it's a team that I personally am overseeing." And like that's exactly what he wanted. He wanted like total credit. And anyway, he was just.
Yeah.
I wonder. So was he? So you did a little research. Was he in real life? Was he like that kind of villainous?
I don't think so. I mean, again, I think they really kind of played it up. I don't think that he was quite as bad as they made him out to be. And I think some of the scenes and like the real conflict scenes between Shelby and him, because they really played up that angle with, or played that up that Shelby and BB clashed pretty much on everything. I think in some of the reading I was doing, it sound which is mostly like Wikipedia. That Shelby agreed with some or even a lot of the stuff that BB has suggested. So
yeah,
dramatic license with a lot of this stuff, but
I think just like any movie or story that you tell, you gotta like fill in the gaps. And like I said, it's easier to root for Shelby and Miles when you have BB as like the bad guy to kind of temper the characters a little bit.
Is that a foil?
Sure. Yeah. It's a foil. It's totally fine. I think that works. It's totally a foil.
Like splash him up against BB. Like,
yeah. Well, it's like it's kind of weird to think about movies and storytelling in general. And this actually circles back to our D&D conversation a little bit. Like you need a quest or a mission, and you need the villain to make the hero, to test the hero's resolve, to see how far they can be pushed. And that guy in this movie happened to be BB. Maybe it wasn't quite like that in real life. I'm sure it could have been similar at least, and it could have been like a perception thing at the time too. Like in real life, maybe they were semi-collaborative, but maybe they actually hated each other. I don't know.
Could have been.
And so they just
put their personal differences aside.
Yeah, maybe they just expounded on that a little bit. Some things don't work when you don't have a villain, but some things do work when. It's weird because I don't know of a movie where it works if everybody's the hero. Can't think of a movie that's really like that, but I can think of movies where everybody's the villain.
You can?
Yeah, absolutely. John Wick. Everybody's a bad guy in that movie. But everybody's a villain. One of them. You're rooting for one of them. Absolutely. You're rooting for John Wick, but also like he's not a good guy.
Is he a reformed bad guy?
I don't know. Well,
but now he's doing these bad things again.
Yeah.
Revenge, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Should we want to say any more about the movie? I mean, it's a good movie. I'd recommend it, especially if you like cars.
I recommend it even if you don't like cars.
Yeah.
It was a ride. Like
very visceral. Like I'd say see it in the theater because
100%.
The engine sounds and like the whine of the engine and like the sound of like shifting gears and exhaust backfire, engine backfiring, and it's so much better in the theater. I mean, obviously, unless you have like a pretty sweet surround sound system. But
even then, there's just I think
something about the theater.
I think I don't see a ton of movies in the theater.
I don't either. Not anymore.
Not anymore. But I kind of like when I saw the ads for this movie, I was like, I might Redbox it, maybe, or maybe I'll catch it on a streaming service. And my dad was actually like, it's been forever since we saw a movie together in the theater. I think it was literally The Truman Show with Jim Carrey.
Man.
So it's been a minute.
A long time ago.
And so we were like, oh man, I really wanted to see, because I wanted to see Knives Out.
Okay.
That's one that I want to see in the theater, and it's not out yet at the time of this recording, or at the time we saw Ford versus Ferrari.
We did see a trailer for it, though.
We did see a trailer for it. But my dad was like, well, I really wanted to see this. And I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. But I think if I had seen that movie in my living room, I would have been very disappointed.
Yeah.
I think that is 100% a movie that should be seen in the theater. This, like you were saying, those engine sounds. JD was freaking out about it later because our friend JD is a car guy. he's a motorcycle car guy. He knows things. I don't know the lingos. I'm sorry. Engines and
displacements, and horsepower.
Yeah.
And he knows his history and he knows cars.
Yeah. And so is my dad. And they were both just super impressed with, if nothing else, the feeling that it sucks you into is during the racing bits.
Sure. Yeah, I thought like the CGI was you would expect, I guess, from a Hollywood film, but I mean it
couldn't
looked
tell.
real. You couldn't tell. You could maybe guess, like, was this CGI? Was this part not? There was obviously the racing scenes are great, but some of the other, like the testing scenes where they're Christian Bale's tearing around their test track and stuff. I mean, all that stuff is great. Christian Bale and Matt Damon both do a really good job. Matt Damon, Carol Shelby, and Christian Bale was
100% as he always is.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Even in movies you don't like with Christian Bale, you're still like, I mean, it was Christian Bale though.
Yeah, you watch it because it's Christian Bale, right?
Yeah.
And he does a really great job. I mean, all the roles in that movie were good. Although it's hard for me to watch John Bernthal as Iacocca because I've seen
he didn't even kill anybody.
Yeah, he didn't kill anybody.
So my main exposure to that actor is actually via The Punisher.
Yep.
And then like a little bit in what was that one you pointed out?
So he was in The Walking Dead.
Okay.
And he was in The Punisher. Those are the two main things that I've seen him in. Also, he's in The Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street, that was one. I did not remember him at all.
He's got kind of a smaller role as a guy, like, I don't know. But
got to start somewhere.
Yeah. But I mean, he's already established by then. Like, he had done Walking Dead, and he did that tank movie with
Brad Pitt. Fury.
Yeah.
Fury Road?
Which I haven't seen.
No, Fury.
I think
Fury Road is the Mad Max one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Also, I'm pretty sure John Bernthal was in The Pacific. He was that was like the Pacific version of Band of Brothers. Did you see Band of Brothers?
No. I'm sorry.
Josh.
I just want to apologize to all the aficionados out there screaming right now. I have not seen Band of Brothers.
So, I recommend that. Should see that. The Pacific also very good. That has the kid from Jurassic Park, the main character. I forget his name.
Like the kid from like
Timmy?
Really?
He's not a little kid anymore.
Oh, he's not.
Spoiler.
I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah.
I'll check it out anyways.
I want to say that Bernthal played a really famous Marine in the Pacific. Yeah, I swear. I have to look it up now just to see because it's gonna kill me if I don't look it up. Yep, he was Manny Rodriguez. So yeah. I don't know if Manny Rodriguez is a famous Marine. It wasn't quite the guy I was thinking of. Yeah, would recommend the Pacific as well. Good. Any final thoughts on Ford vs. Ferrari?
Ford vs. Ferrari. I think. What's your ranking for that movie, Nate?
It's our scale.
You can use whatever scale you want, baby.
So we were talking about Bernthal. It was hard for me to separate this role from his Shane in The Walking Dead or The Punisher.
Frank.
Yeah.
Frank Castle.
Frank Castle. Like a lot of his facial tics and facial expressions and the way he I don't know, like moves his face around, purses his lips or something before he says something. I'm like, he does that in The Punisher. He did that in The Walking Dead. And I'm like, but I mean, that's like.
So were you expecting him to just like pull out a gun and shoot those guys at that point? Were you like, oh geez, he's gonna? Oh no. Okay,
no, I was like, but I'm like, I was almost like, come on. I was like, come on, John. Diversify your, don't just play John Bernthal, be, get into your role a little bit. He did fine.
I'll play devil's advocate here for a second. So in The Walking Dead, and I haven't seen The Walking Dead. I know it's another one of those things.
Watch the first season.
Surprises people.
First season's good
because it is kind of like up my alley a little bit. But for The Punisher, I mean, Frank Castle's basically a psychopath. Like
I'm saying I'm not. I don't have. I love The Punisher.
No, like
I loved it.
So he's. I mean, he's to go out and kill people. You have to have some screws loose. Maybe psychopath's not the completely right term, but he's
sociopath.
Maybe sociopath. That's what I'm looking for. But a lot of corporate businessmen and higher ups in companies have the same tendencies and tics as serial killers. They just focus on different things. So from that perspective, like I thought it kind of reinforced it because I'm used to him being the Punisher and just hauling off on people in some of the most brutal ways. And then I see him there and I'm like, oh, he actually fits in perfectly in this corporate setting.
Yeah, I can see that.
Maybe I might be stretching it a little too far.
I mean, you can make an argument for anything, right?
Just about.
You know?
Just about. But that's where my mind went with him as Aikoko.
Okay. You know, he was featured like more like kind of towards the beginning, but then he just kind of like fell off a little bit as they focused more on Shelby and Miles.
Yeah.
And I was at the same time I was a little disappointed. I'm like, I want more John Bernthal. Not that I want less of Christian Bale or Matt Damon, but
Matt Damon.
Put some more, yeah. Matt Damon. So the scale, I would probably, if we do 10-point.
Whatever scale you're comfortable with. You can use whatever scale you want, and I'm going to use whatever scale I want. Doesn't even have to line up.
I put Ford versus Ferrari at a 6 or 7 on a 10-point scale.
Okay.
It's good. I mean, I could see myself maybe wanting to watch it again, but we'll get to a movie later that I've watched repeatedly. I don't know if I would put this up there, that same level. So I'll say it's like a 6 or 7.
About a 6 or so out of 10?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not too bad.
Okay. What about you?
Not bad at all. So I liked it. I liked it a lot, actually. I thought I liked it way more than I thought I would. I don't think you have to be a fan of racing to enjoy the movie at all. Like racing was almost a foil. Like it was what drove them.
Sure.
And it added, it was the action of that movie.
So like if I had to make a snap judgment on that and be like, is this a Josh movie or not? I would have said no.
Would you? Interesting. I think if I was gonna
before we saw it, I guess.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like racing movie, I'm like, but so anyway.
Fair enough. I'd say for my ranking, I'd say on a scale from Fast and the Furious to Days of Thunder, I'm gonna give it 6 points above Cars.
Fast and the Furious to Days. So Fast and the Furious is the worst.
Yes, I can't think of a worse racing movie. I apologize to everybody who loves those movies. I'm happy that you love them. I hate them.
Racing movies in general?
No,
or the Fast
and the Furious movies.
So, yeah.
Which is a pity because I love Vin Diesel.
Yeah.
But I also hate Paul Walker. Rest in peace. Sorry, Paulie.
So Fast and Furious is the worst, and you said Days of Thunder was the best?
I think because I was trying to think of other racing movies that I've seen, and up until now I would have said, actually, I think I'll give it, I'm going to give it 1 point above Days of Thunder. I think
Days of the best racing movie you've ever seen?
I can't think of a racing movie that I would rank above Days of Thunder, but I now put Ford versus Ferrari over that.
Okay. Well, you initially said 6 points above Cars. Now, where was Cars at?
Cars is like the middle, honestly. Like Cars is fine. It's also not about racing.
Nope. Racing is, it's not the best parts of the movie at all.
Nothing's about racing. It's all about something else. Cars is also weird because does it count as a car racing movie? Because if they were people, it'd be a foot race.
You're right. Now, going back to Reddit, and you can find something for everything. Have you ever seen those pictures of what, like, if these cars are alive, what, like, a cross-section of the car would look like?
No, that sounds amazing.
Like, they have mouths, right. Do they eat? I guess they eat motor oil.
Right. Yeah.
They go to Flo's for motor oil, like we drink coffee, so...
Do they defecate?
I don't know.
Like, I don't know.
They stay at the Cozy Cone, which is like basically like a garage. And is there a bathroom in there?
Yeah, you don't really see.
Is there a kitchen,
bathroom, or an outhouse that I recall? But I don't know.
And Flo's Diner, like it's a diner. What the hell? Is it a diner?
Yeah, I think so. Well,
what the hell do they do there?
It's like a Sonic Drive Up is kind of how it's laid out. It's all kind of outdoor seating and awnings.
I think there's definitely a whole rabbit hole you can go down.
Bro, that's where I live.
Like thinking about this Cars world, like how far does it go? Like I think I saw on Reddit again. Spent too much time on there. Something about Reddit. Like what?
Credit to Reddit.
Yeah, credit to Reddit. Did World War II happen in the Cars universe? Like,
there's a whole plethora of questions.
Is there a car Hitler?
I think my favorite things are the conspiracy theories about how all the Pixar movies are intertwined, or like, I was reminded of a classic theory. We just rewatched the original Aladdin. I shouldn't say the original, but the original Disney Aladdin.
The animated one.
The animated one. Robin Williams. May he rest in peace.
Yep. Rest in peace, Robin.
I'm going to go on record here saying I would kill Paul Walker every day if it meant Robin Williams could be alive.
Wow. You would live with that on your conscience?
I would take that hit for the human race.
Well, now, okay, so Devil's Advocate, I've heard that Paul Walker was a pretty nice guy.
That's fine.
Bro, pretty good dude.
Terrible actor though.
Yeah, I can't really defend that.
Yeah. Anyway,
I can't, argue that.
Have you heard the theory that Aladdin takes place in like a post-apocalyptic world, and that's why the genie knew about like Sebastian and Arsenio Hall and all of those other references, like,
oh,
and that's why Agrabah is like in this weird desert that's not quite like, there's some stuff that isn't quite right for any particular time period, and there's like a magic carpet in the Cave of Wonders, and like there's like this whole. I'm sure I've never seen it looked for it on Reddit, but I am 100% sure that there's a whole thing about that on Reddit.
Okay.
Anyway, that's.
But I mean, like
rabbit holes.
The Pixar movies are in the same universe, aren't they?
Well, I don't think that's
like they have the same companies, like Dynaco, like is it Toy Story and Cars?
Yeah, the Toyota. Pizza Planet.
The Toyota.
Well, I think so. Pixar said that, like, if people want to draw those conclusions, they can. Pixar has no official stance on it.
But it's just kind of a fun thing that they would put into all the different movies, like a nod to the other one.
And it's great to layer those, like, so when like the next Pixar movie comes out, it's great to try and fit that in to like how that whole scheme of things works. And
so, like, I recently watched Toy Story 4. Finally,
did you finish it?
I did.
Okay, and what did you think about that? So Nate and I are old school like Toy Story fans, as I recall.
Yep.
When that came out, like, of course, when Toy Story 1 came out, we didn't know each other, but
no.
Around the time Toy Story 2 came out, we started working together.
Yeah, I was like 11, 95 in Toy Story.
Oh man, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so I would have been 11. Yeah, so I really liked Toy Story when it came out. I mean, it was obviously groundbreaking new thing that Pixar came out with. As far as 4, I need to watch it again because I was kind of off and on. I started watching it with my son Eric. I missed parts of it, or I wasn't paying as much attention as I'd like to. I thought it was good. I liked it.
I really liked it, but for me, it was the weakest Toy Story movie. Now that is my personal opinion, but I absolutely recommend you see it. Like,
yeah,
it was great.
It's good for sure. I want to watch it again before I draw that conclusion as far as like the ranking. I think we talked about this one of the last times we hung out. Your ranking of the Toy Story movies is, is it 1, 3, 2, 4?
It's really, really tough because I kind of see 1, 2, and 3 as like their own, as like a solid entity. They all support each other really well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the best examples of sequels that can be made. Like there's not many other franchises that can say like each movie's better than the last in a way. So yeah, I think ranking them my favorite to least favorite, and it's kind of tough for me to like sort out the nostalgia, but maybe that's actually what makes them great in a way too. Because like 1, I just always feel like I'm reliving that bit of my childhood a little bit where there was nothing better than Toy Story almost,
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And then Toy Story 2 came out and I was older, but I was still like, dang, this is good. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and say 2, 3, 1, 4. I think.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
1 is all the way in the 3rd spot.
Like I said, it's really hard for me to separate them.
Yeah, 1, there is that nostalgia, obviously, and then this kind of the dangerous thing with nostalgic stuff is like you remember what it was like, your experience when you saw it or heard it or read it or whatever it was, whatever form it is, and you remember how you felt then, so then you go back to it expecting to experience that same feeling.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it doesn't happen. So like watching Toy Story 1, you're like, this is cool, but like from today's, 20, almost 25 years
Yeah.
later, you're like, this animation isn't that great. Which sounds like heresy or
It was just one of those things that's like an example of how far technology has progressed. I remember reading something about, like, when Toy Story 3 came out, about the facial expressions that Woody had in Toy Story 1. He only has like 10 facial expressions. And in Toy Story 2, it went up from like 10 to like 15 or 20. Somebody can look this up and like verify the number if they really wanted to. And then in like Toy Story 3, though, it was basically unlimited.
So they hit that point, that point with technology where...
Yeah. So like on the one hand, like I agree, it's kind of, if I've just come off of watching Toy Story 3, I'm not going to go back and watch 1 because it'll look clunky.
Yeah.
A little bit. But in some ways, like, I think that was part of my problem with Toy Story 4. Is it was, all of their movements were so smooth. And it was beautifully done.
Mm-hmm.
But they're toys.
Yeah.
I thought the toys should still be a little more clunky. And maybe... It made sense to me that, like, Forky had really weird arm movements. Like, I thought he was animated almost perfectly. I'm trash!
Yeah, and, like, he couldn't bend his leg or his torso or whatever. He just had to kind of, like...
Clunk along, hobble along. But I liked, there was aspects that I liked that I didn't like, I should say I loved. I loved Keanu Reeves as Duke Kaboom, like the Canadian Evel Knievel. That I don't know. I'm not sure if Keanu Reeves can make a bad movie. Because even the bad movies he makes, I still like.
Everybody loves Keanu.
I just, have you ever seen Man of Tai Chi?
No.
It's on Netflix. It has Keanu Reeves in it. And I think he also maybe directed it? Something. He was involved in the production in some way. It's not, but the main character is this other kid, and Keanu Reeves is like, he's the villain in the movie, kind of.
Really?
Yeah. And it's this weird kind of like secret fighting thing that he does. And the movie's just, honestly, if it was anybody but Keanu Reeves in that role, I would be like, this is a terrible movie, don't see it. But because it's Keanu, I'm like, I mean, I don't own it on DVD, but if I ever saw it in Walmart, I'd buy it.
You're right, he was the director.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, Keanu just killed it as Duke Kaboom in Toy Story 4.
Yeah, he did.
Just killed it.
You really felt for him.
I did.
Almost like a redemption.
Rijon! I'll do it for you, Rijon.
Yes, you, Canada.
Yes, you, Canada.
Yeah, I liked it. I want to watch it again. Just, without any distractions. Just scope it out and watch it.
I was thinking I would buy it, but I have Disney Plus now, so I don't know if I need to buy it now.
I bought it. You may want it maybe for the special features.
That's true. Actually, I am. I've noticed since I've had kids, like I have a lot less time for special features.
Yeah.
But I used to love special features, like the making of and like the thought going into different scenes and
director's commentary is just out the window when you have kids, pretty much.
No kidding. It's a huge commitment to like sit through the director's commentary now.
Yeah, because it's like you have to like know the movie. Honestly, I've never actually watched a director's commentary. I've seen clips from director's commentaries, but it's like, to me, like, I feel like I'd have to like really like a movie a lot.
Dude, I sat through the Matrix, the first Matrix, so just the Matrix, I guess. I've watched the audio commentary with, I think it's the director and Carrie Moss, and then I've sat through all of the extended edition Lord of the Rings cast commentary, like the one with Liv Taylor and Merry and Pippin, and I forget who else was in it, but that was just great.
Billy Boyd.
Yeah, Billy Boyd and Dominic Monaghan.
Moynihan.
Yeah, those were...
Liv Tyler.
Dang it, Liv Tyler.
Steven Tyler, Liv Tyler.
Well, I didn't know if she wanted separation and to like be her own person. I was just trying to respect the woman.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Okay.
I'm backpedaling like I'm running for president.
Okay, quick hits.
So give me a favorite book there, Nate.
So my favorite book all time, I've read it multiple times. I almost kind of read it like once every year or two, is The Stand by Stephen King.
So do you Nate's like my Stephen King guide a little bit here. Cuz I think I borrowed your copy one time and I read it. So when you read it every couple of years, do you always read the expanded edition? Cuz remind me of the history of that, like
Well, yes, that is the only version that you should read, is the complete uncut version. So it clocks in at 1,153 pages. So the original story, the original version was like 700 and some pages, I believe. So he had to cut a lot of stuff out of it. I think it's because the publisher didn't think that it would sell with being that long. Or I think that's just the way the story goes or something.
cuz when he wrote the initial one that was pretty early in his career, right?
Yeah, it was actually, if you look at his the history, like the books that he wrote, I think it was like third or fourth book or something.
Wow.
It was like the Great American Novel. I mean, so the original version was very popular. So that was released in, like, I believe, without looking at it, like the early 80s.
Do you know, was it because when he first started writing, he used a pseudonym, right? It wasn't Stephen King. It was like
He wrote some books as this one was written by him. He wrote some books as Richard Bachman.
that's the name I was trying to think of.
But this one was by him. So early 80s or late 70s, early 80s, the original version came out. It was popular, very popular. So then in the early 90s, he kind of brought all the original material back, and then he kind of tried to update the setting a little bit, the year that it takes place in, and so we got the whole 1153 page.
So he Lucased it before Lucas. Well, because like I was under the impression initially that it was just that he wanted it a certain way, and the editors were like, "It's too long," and he was like, "All right, fine." And then as he got more famous, he was like, "All right, let's do the big boy." But I didn't realize he like spruced up some of the stuff in there.
Yeah, like
that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But
if you read it, there's some, like, what'd you call them, like anachronisms or continuity stuff or whatever, where he kind of like, it doesn't make sense because some of the stuff is still like, this is from the 70s, even though it's supposed to be taking place in the 90s. Like, he references something that, that would make sense if it was in the 70s, but in the 90s, you're like, what? And of course, I can't think of anything specific for that. Just have to read it for yourselves.
Don't take my word for it.
Don't take my word for it.
So you actually recommended that to me, man, years ago, and I read it, and I of course read the recommended version.
Mm.
I can't call it unabridged because technically the first one wasn't abridged, but why don't we call it the complete stand? I guess. And that was good. It was Stephen King is associated with horror a lot, and this was not a horror book.
Right.
It's not a horror film.
Or maybe parts of it,
Well, sure. It had some suspense elements to it, but it definitely was I think does it fall into the category of urban fantasy? Cuz there's some slight overtones of like mythological type things like you'd find in a fantasy book. But it's
like Lord of the Rings.
But it's definitely super grounded and urban, and it's like post-apocalyptic urban fantasy, light urban fantasy. Sure. Jeez, that's a weird.
There's definitely some supernatural elements.
There you go. That's the word I was looking for.
For sure, supernatural elements. A big part of it. Broad strokes, it's a battle between good and evil.
Yeah.
But there's so many characters in it, and their stories, the things that they go through. Now, I've always kind of had and I'm sure a lot of people are like this, had a somewhat unhealthy fascination with like the end of the world, post-apocalyptic stuff. I just kind of love how epic the book is and kind of how King makes it feel. I like the characters he's created and you find yourself, especially after reading it multiple times, you pick up on different things, and that's with with anything, any book, you can identify with each of the characters, some more than others, obviously, but you can find something in all of them that you can identify with.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite book of all time. Let's go. So Josh's favorite. What's your favorite book?
Man, it's always hard for me to narrow that down. Half of the time, my favorite book is the one I'm reading, but the one that I find myself going back to a lot is The Count of Monte Cristo, and also
Is that by
Only
a guy
Forward.
named Dumbass?
Yeah. So the reason I started reading that book is literally because of the Shawshank Redemption.
Yep, and that's where my
Also
joke was
Stephen
from,
King.
guys.
Yeah. Also, based on Stephen King, so it's
Yep,
kind of like
Stephen
a full
King.
circle. So there's a scene in the Shawshank Redemption which is a movie where there are a bunch of guys in prison, and they're sorting books for the library, and this guy goes, "Oh, this can't be right. The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumbass." And Tim Robbins' character goes, "It's pronounced Dumas.
It's Dumas.
It's about a prison break. You'd like it." And then he's like, "Well, shouldn't we file that under education?"
Yeah,
Morgan
Morgan Freeman.
Freeman.
Should we file that under education? Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so after that, for years and years and years, was my favorite movie. I wasn't sure that any movie could get any better, and because of that, like I read The Count of Monte Cristo, and then when I read it, I was like, "Geez, this is really good." I mean, it's also a huge book.
How long is it?
Oh man,
Roughly?
I don't know. I think the copy I have, I gotta say, at least 1,500 pages.
Wow.
That's my guess. And I could be a little off on that. It depends too a little bit on your translation, because Alexander Dumas was French, and so he naturally wrote it in French, his native language. The cool thing about that,
Doesn't quite make sense to me, but okay, I'll believe you.
yeah,
Got it.
you might have to say my word for it.
Sure.
But the cool thing about writing in French at that time is that like not a lot about the French language has changed, so it translates really well. Unlike some other works, like War and Peace, for example, or A Tale of Two Cities, they don't translate super well. They translate well enough, and we make it work, and they are good reads. But the French language translates pretty smoothly most of the time.
Our Tale of Two Cities, could be wrong.
Was that by
Was
a
in
French dude?
English, right?
Was it? Well, then there's no excuse
Dickens?
for the reason that was
Right.
translated so poorly.
Now, but I mean, English back then, geez. I mean,
Who knows?
Who knows what the hell they're talking about?
No
in
kidding.
Half that stuff.
But yeah, I love that it's The Count of Monte Cristo starts out a young man who unexpectedly has some new responsibilities on a ship, and he goes home to meet up with his fiancée, the lovely Mercedes, and because of somebody who was jealous of his station as a new tentative ship captain and jealous of his relationship with Mercedes, frames him for treason, I believe. And he gets put into prison, and then it's about his escape, and the short answer is that he takes revenge on like everybody who wronged him in like some really kind of cool and epic ways. That's the short
Badass.
answer. It is. Like
I
it's
should read that.
you got to remember that like it's an era where everybody carried a sword. So there's always like kind of that threat of violence. Like you could get challenged to a duel and that was a thing, but very rarely are they used. So it's a very paced, almost like political maneuverings. But he just he just does everything so completely that you can't help but be impressed. Like one of my favorite throwaway scenes from the book is he's having this dinner party with a bunch of people that he knew when he was younger, and nobody recognizes him, of course, because, literature. And they have this exotic fish for dinner, and they were like, "Well, how did you like get it shipped here?" Because this is in the days of like Bonaparte, so I can't remember the exact year time frame that it happens in, but there's not any refrigeration or anything like that. So he goes, "Oh, well, I had it shipped live. Like they put it in a giant tank and they shipped it." And they were like, "Holy cow, that must have cost you a fortune." He goes, "Yeah, it did." they're like, but what if it had died on the way here? Then what would you have served tonight? And he goes, oh, well, come with me. And he takes them into another room and there's a second fish. So he ordered 2 of these things just in case one of them died.
Nice.
Anyway, it's like a kind of weird throwaway thing, but it's one of my favorite things to just show how like prepared he was. It's a little bit like Batman. He has time to prepare. You can't beat him.
Very methodical.
Yeah.
Planner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite books. And then the other one that I mentioned is Only Forward by Michael Marshall Smith. And that's a bizarre sci-fi psychological book. And that's all I have to say about that. I don't know how to describe it. It's a really weird book. If you don't like weird books or you're averse to certain language, then I wouldn't recommend it.
I remember you've told me about that book before. Wasn't it somewhat rare, or like the copy that you had, or the printing that you had was?
I borrowed the book from a guy I knew in college, and I ended up keeping his book for like 4 years, which is not usually my tendency. I usually, use and return. So I ended up giving it back to him, and then when I did that, I was like, but now I want to read it. And so I ordered one from Amazon, and I noticed that I could get the UK edition, which I did. And like nowadays, they crack down on that a little tighter. So it's slightly harder. It's not like illegal or anything. It's just kind of like frowned upon a little bit. So yeah, for us in the United States, it's a little tricky to get a hold of a UK copy of that particular title.
You still have it?
Oh yeah, of course I do.
Very cool.
Yeah, so those are my favorites.
All right. So let's go. The next one was movies. So my favorite.
Is it a Stephen King movie?
No.
Oh, just checking.
Now, so we're talking favorites. Now, you kind of bent the rules a little bit here, and you've done that, I guess, like a couple times, and where you list like multiple things.
Well,
it's kind of difficult to pick a favorite.
I mean, how do you rank something number 1?
Yeah, right.
I
there's probably like it's like 1A through 1, F. G, I don't know.
Even if we broke it down by genre, I would still have a hard time, I think, saying that this one movie or book is my favorite.
Sure.
There's like a cluster that definitely make up my top 3 to 5, depending on what we're talking about.
Right. So movie. So my favorite one, not a Stephen King movie, is Interstellar. Why, you would ask?
I would ask.
Very simply, space and dad tears.
Huh. All right. No, that's valid.
It's a Christopher Nolan movie, which Christopher Nolan is a phenomenal filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I've always had a interest in like space travel and real, stuff like Apollo, moon landing, space shuttle, and then sci-fi, fantasy type stuff too.
It really does kind of bridge those a little bit. It's like based a little bit on theory. But it's based on actual theory.
Sure.
As opposed to just like, I built
Something
the flux capacitor and we went back in time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's believable. And it kind of bridges, like you said, it bridges that kind of gap, like with it seems and feels like something that could happen in the near future. And so it's like he did a really good job set in the near future. But they figured out interstellar travel.
Yeah.
Or, they found a portal.
I find myself believing, this could get dangerous. Like, I find myself believing any movie that Christopher Nolan puts out, I'm like, this seems plausible, doesn't it? Like Inception, somehow that seemed super plausible to me. Batman, super plausible. Interstellar, more plausible.
A Dunkirk, that actually happened. So,
wow. That one was probably the most implausible. I'm just kidding.
I actually haven't seen that one.
Same.
Heard it's really great. I just didn't get around to seeing it in the theater, which is one of the Nolan films. Always has lots of complex sound, very grandiose, epic. A lot of them are filmed or shown in IMAX theaters. So anyway, back to Interstellar. Space travel. It's about family, love conquering all beyond space and time, and if you try and think about it too much, a lot of it won't make sense or might even seem kind of silly. But
it gets slippery if you try and
really nail it down. That's where you might kind of lose a little bit. But I mean, just to watch it and just to experience it. I mean, I've watched it many times. Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
I like breaking down film and kind of, overanalyzing probably. But I also don't think every movie has to be, like, perfect. People complain about plot holes, but I don't think plot holes are plot holes usually. Usually when people say plot holes, it's just like, well, did you really need to see this guy shaving and then brushing his teeth in the morning? No, we can skip over that. That's not a plot hole. That's skip the boring stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Interstellar was good. I liked it.
Yeah, So I put it here as my favorite. It's definitely one of my favorites. It's hard to pick an absolute favorite, but this time of my life, or just is tops, I'd say. So what about you, Josh?
I can't help it, man. My top 3, because that's just how it's got to be. But it is my top 3 that's a lock. They've been my top 3 section for many years, and I don't really see that changing. Is the Star Wars saga. Like,
is that all of them?
It really is.
When you say Star Wars, so that's way more than one movie.
I know.
Can you pick a single Star Wars movie as a favorite?
If I had to, I would probably say... I should anger everybody right now and be like,
Rise of Skywalker.
Or
Last Jedi.
honestly, Return of the Jedi is probably my favorite.
Okay.
It's got that nostalgia laid in there, of course. But as a kid, I just loved all of the different places they went.
Mm-hmm.
You had the Hoth, you had the desert, you had the forest, you had Ewoks, you had 3PO, you had Han. Even though there was so much going on, you didn't feel like you were being distracted. It was paced beautifully. Sure. And I felt that even as a kid. But yeah, I kind of, just like the Toy Story thing, I really lump all of them together. And I try and view all the movies as a whole. And we can rip into that later, I suppose. But then my other ones are, my other hard picks is Casablanca.
I haven't seen that.
Well, I'm not surprised. I have that now on Blu-ray, so if you'd like to borrow it, you're welcome to.
Borrow it.
It's a classic, so it's a lot more paced. Yeah, one of the things that I remind people of, even if you watch it and you don't like it, I'm like, okay, but let me remind you, they made this movie in a week.
Really?
So that's how they did it in those days. They
bam, 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 bam.
You showed up, you knew your lines, you said your lines, you hit your marks, you were done. Because you were an actor and that was your job, was to act. And so you needed that job and then you needed to go to the next job. It wasn't like, we're going to give you $600 billion to make this movie. And, if it stretches out over 5 years, then that's fine. It was, we got deadlines to keep. We got movies to crank out. Also, there was no blockbuster. So you needed that fresh stuff all the time.
Sure.
But yeah, I just love Casablanca. I love the character development in that story. I love that. I don't even want to say too much. I don't want to spoil it for you.
Okay. Well.
I just, have you ever heard the phrase "round up the usual suspects"?
Yes. That's
from Casablanca. I mean, I'm sure
not from the movie called The Usual Suspects.
No, because Casablanca came first. And then my other favorite movie is It's a Wonderful Life.
I would agree with you. It's a Wonderful Life is a great classic film.
I watch it every year, at least once. Usually it ends up being more like 2 or 3 times. I have it in black and white and colorized. And I love both of them.
Now, have you seen, is the one that you, the colorized one, the HD remaster, they showed that on TV last year and it was nuts. I saw part of it at my dad's house and it was nuts how just crisp and looked like it was filmed yesterday.
I kind of doubt I have that one because I bought my black and white and colorized one came in the same pack with a bell, a Christmas ornament that goes on my tree also every year.
Daddy, every time a bell rings and
Attaboy, Clarence.
Attaboy.
Yeah. Jimmy Stewart. That's my favorite. I watch it every year. I don't think I've seen that super remastered one. I'll have to find a
It
copy
might have
of
been
that.
a new thing just last year. It was on like NBC or something.
Well, then I guess I'm gonna own it 3 times then.
So speaking of Christmas movies, Scrooge is one of my all-time favorite, not just Christmas movies, but just all-time favorite movies. Like my friend John at work, we talk about Scrooge a lot. It's a movie I watched so many times when I was a kid. Bill Murray, of course, is great.
What is it about that movie that keeps bringing you back? Because I know
I don't know, it
your
was just-
passion for this movie is incredible.
I think a lot of it is like the nostalgia, like when I watched it. It's like a time capsule of the 80s. I mean, it's just
Yeah, true.
And it's like a great story. It's feel good. I mean, you got Bill Murray, but it's based on
Christmas Carol.
yes, Christmas Carol. That's it. Thank you.
Bill's visited by 3
Yeah,
spirits.
3 spirits and all that. A modern retelling of that. And you got Bill Murray.
Because Bill Murray is Ebenezer Scrooge.
Yep.
Or the version of Ebenezer Scrooge in that movie.
Yep.
He's
Frank
not
Cross.
called Ebenezer or Scrooge, I don't think.
Just the characters are just. There's so many great characters in there, and the actors are great. I mean, it's got Bobcat Goldthwait in it. Yeah. And the spirits, the spirits are awesome. Like the music is great. I mean, there's a part at the beginning where they're showing like these fake TV trailers for these fake TV shows,
Yes.
and they're just nuts. And it's
I
just-
love it when movies do that. When they take the time to like create this fake
yeah.
in universe thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's like
yeah,
we're gonna film this show within this show, or within so
Yeah. Carol Kane, Bill Murray, Karen Allen.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
That really was just.
Karen Allen's great. I mean, she was in Indiana Jones.
Oh yes.
Brian Doyle Murray was in Scrooged, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, he was. He played Bill Murray's dad in the Ghost Christmas
I
Past.
wanted a choo-choo train.
It's 5 pounds of veal.
Yes. Oh man. That's right. Also, Paul Schaefer in that movie. You may recognize him from was he Letterman's music guy?
Yeah,
Yeah, he was street musician number 4.
that's right.
I cheated. I pulled it up
Yeah.
on my phone
Okay.
here.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I watched it so many times when I was a kid, and it just it reminds me of my childhood. Christmas, obviously, it's a Christmas movie. It's feel good, kind of at the end. Spoiler. But I mean, Christmas Carol.
It's Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
You know how it's gonna end.
Broad strokes. And then, of course, within this movie, there is also a Christmas Carol live TV production that they're working on called
That's right.
called Scrooge.
Forgot
So and
about that.
yeah, so it's a great movie. Definitely a Christmas movie. I would also, speaking of Christmas movies, I would consider Die Hard Christmas movie.
I'm pro Die Hard as a Christmas movie.
I saw something today where someone said that if Die Hard is a Christmas movie, then Lethal Weapon is a Christmas movie.
Why?
Now that I don't know, because I didn't read it.
Oh,
Read the thread.
I'll have to
But,
look for that on Reddit.
Was there in Lethal Weapon? Did part of it take place during Christmas?
Not that I recall.
Did his wife get killed at
she
Christmas time?
Kill at Christmas? I don't think so. That sounds like a weak theory to me. Sounds like a weak
But
theory to me.
definitely Die Hard, I would say.
Oh yeah,
Christmas.
that and Lord of the Rings
Lord of the Rings, yes.
because there's elves in it.
Okay. I always thought you were going to go with, when it was released, they would release them.
That's true. They were like Christmas releases, weren't they?
Like, I don't know if you did this, but
I'm
like
just
my
kidding.
family, like we would go, like we'd go go to my grandma's at Christmas time. I think for at least the first 2 Lord of the Rings movies, we went and saw them during that Christmas vacation. It was kind of a thing that we did. And you went to like the midnight releases for all of these.
I did not for Fellowship of the Ring. I wanted to really bad, But because of my age at that time, it was kind of at a period where, I mean, I was like, I don't
That would have
know.
been what, 2001, 2? Was it
Yeah.
2000?
I mean, it was late teens. You know, I was at least 15. I can't narrow it down any more than that. But it was like at that 10 years time where like your parents are giving you freedom to do stuff, but you can't quite just do whatever you want.
I mean, a midnight showing of a 3-hour movie.
That was a big deal.
That would be a big deal.
And so I got I couldn't get tickets because they were sold out. I was like so stoked for it. And but yeah, the Fellowship of the Ring and Return of the King I both saw at midnight.
What was it, you mean Two Towers and Return of the King you saw?
Oh, did I say
you-
Fellowship? Yeah, Two Towers and Return of the King. I saw both of those.
Did you see
At
Fellowship
midnight.
in the theater? Just
I saw
not
Fellowship
at
in the
midnight?
theater, but it was just not at midnight. I saw it. It had to have been like a daytime showing, and I was scrambling for tickets because I couldn't find them, and like you couldn't just go on the internet and buy them. You had to go to the theater,
Go to the theater.
and purchase them.
So that's so old school.
I know. I'm still that way. Like I don't buy my tickets online. I go in and I pay for them there, and I always get weird looks, and they're like, "Why are you buying these tickets right here?"
Yeah.
I have to touch your money. Yeah, it's kind of
Um,
hilarious.
for some reason, I'm thinking of is it a website called like Line Party? Is that
Yeah, so they called it the midnight showings were called line parties.
okay? That's yep.
And it was weird because when I told my fairy godmother about it, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to the line party," and she goes, "Say that again." And I said, "I'm going to the line party," and she was like, "Tell me more about this." But she like took this serious tone, and I was like, "Well, I'm going to see the I'm going to see the Two Towers at midnight," and she was like, "Oh, okay, that's great. Nope, do that, Josh. Have fun." And I was like, so later I was like, "But why? Why are you
Thinking
asking?"
like you were doing lines
She thought it
and
was.
it would become a party?
Yeah, she thought the line party I was going to. I don't know why she thought this because I'm like notoriously the guy who doesn't do that stuff. But like, yeah, she thought I was going to like snort cocaine.
And you were like not even 20 years old.
Yeah. But on the upside, I'm happy that I had somebody who cared enough to ask me those questions. You know, somebody cared about me that much. So
That is true. That's good. So you said fairy godmother.
yeah.
Do I know this person?
No.
No.
No. I don't think you've met her.
Okay.
You've met her son though, Brian.
Okay.
Shout out to Brian.
Brian. You know, so many people. Tangent time. So many people know this guy.
That's true. They do.
Like,
If I could get him to support this podcast, then we'll have it made.
so where I work, there was another friend of mine, Jordan. You know, he started shortly after I did, and turns out he knows Brian
Oh yeah,
because in totally different circles.
Brian's like a made man.
Yeah.
If we had any
Like-
sort of thing like that in Lincoln,
Uh,
he's definitely like I don't
Yeah.
know. He's the guy to know.
for sure. Yeah, like because the totally different circles. Like my friend Jordan's from Iowa originally, came to Nebraska college age or after college. He met Brian at Best Buy.
Oh
That's
yeah,
where he met him from.
I'm sure.
So yeah. And then I'm like, you know, I work downtown in here in Lincoln, in the Haymarket, and so if we go out to eat for lunch or something, you know, oftentimes it's not unusual to see Brian somewhere.
Yeah,
And like I'll say something to Jordan, he's like, "Oh yeah, everybody knows Brian."
yeah. It's a little more rare to see him downtown now because he doesn't work at the place he was now. He's doing. He's going back to school for audio engineering.
Okay.
Sorry, buddy. We're gonna talk about your whole life.
So then when he was 5,
Did I tell you about the time when Brian? No, I'm just kidding.
okay, so we covered movies. So the next thing we have here is video games,
If you don't know Brian, what are you doing with your life?
right?
Sorry.
If you don't know Brian, you will eventually. So video games, favorite video game, and this again this is also one of those hard things to pick.
Not for me.
Okay, not for you.
I know. This is the one
Um,
exception, sort of. Never mind. I shouldn't have said that at all. I'm going to meta it out.
So video game. I mean, I enjoy playing video games. I played them, you know, when I was a kid. Kind of for a while between like preteen to about until I was into college. I didn't play them as much. Then I got back into console gaming, PC gaming. But what I'm picking for my favorite video game of all time, is Tecmo Super Bowl for Nintendo.
Nate's a Renaissance man.
I am. Josh can attest to the greatness of Tecmo Super Bowl.
I certainly can. If you get yourself a good emulator and get that bad boy from the Nintendo Entertainment System, because I just
there's a healthy modding community with that. Where there's people that they have tournaments, like Tecmo Super Bowl tournaments, like at a bar. Like there's one in Lincoln.
It's really
happens. And
I would play. I'm going to put this out here. I would play fantasy football based on a group of people playing Tecmo Super Bowl.
That's a good idea.
That just I
like just have like people like play the games, and you draft a roster based on
what the teams are going to play. Yeah, I would do it 100%.
Now, people have to play every single game, or can we just sim so we can get the stats?
Does the game let you sim games?
Yeah.
Does it? I couldn't remember if it did or not.
You just don't control any of the team.
They just go. I would do both. I would love to play a fantasy football game based off of players playing Tecmo Super Bowl, and I think it would need to be separate, and I would also totally do one based off of simmed games.
Because
like the computer just going,
yeah,
here's like the straight averages, and like here's the weird thing we did, because I mean, the Nintendo Entertainment System was a beautiful machine and did a lot considering its 8-bit technology. But it's definitely not meant to handle that kind of weirdness.
Mm. Yeah, I think you would have to separate that stuff, because like if a human is playing any of these teams, like your stats are going to be blown like way out of proportion. Like
way out.
You got like Barry Sanders, Bo Jackson, Jerry Rice. I mean, these guys are going to be like they would like win you your fantasy league like single-handedly.
Takes the pass. Oh no, wait, was that
was a hockey
Tecmo?
game?
That was that was Blades of Steel.
Yep.
What did they say? No, didn't they have a phrase in Tecmo Super Bowl they did that was like that? Or was it just like
theirs is more like, the repetitive like
sound effects.
Hut.
You could hut forever in that game, if I remember right.
Yeah, so like a lot of times what I would do is like when I was younger and you didn't have an emulator where you could just pause it or save the state, you leave it at like either a kickoff screen or the halftime. Or you pick a play and you leave it, because then it'd just be like, and you could turn the TV off and just go, and you'd be like hut. There's no play clock, nothing. So
those are the days.
And then so my reason for this is just not for one, it's a great game just in general. It's really fun to play, and I have a lot of memories associated with it. My grandparents, when I was a kid, they bought like a sports set of the Nintendo.
Yeah.
That had
those.
Like volleyball, like Super Spike volleyball, like World Cup soccer, Tecmo Super Bowl, and I think Roger Clemens baseball maybe.
Yeah.
But my cousins and I would or the boy cousins anyway. We didn't let the girls play, or they didn't want to play. I don't know. We would play that game like deep into the late into the night, Thanksgiving, Christmas, when we were all together, and it was there's a lot of nostalgia memories with that. But I mean, this is a game that I can pick up and play now, just like I played back then. It's a great game.
Yeah, it really is. I've played it. I'm not like we've established, I'm not really a big sports guy, but like Tecmo Super Bowl, I play that.
My cousin Ryan, also not a sports guy, but he loved playing this game because it's just. Yeah, you don't have to like football. Like, you just figure out how it works, and you're just like, hey,
and you go,
be good. So yeah. Josh, your absolute undisputed number one video game is
the Metal Gear franchise. And if I had to pick one, because I know you're gonna ask, if you haven't played the Metal Gear Solid games, in my opinion, Metal Gear Solid is what has prompted me to buy like new consoles. So the only reason I have a PlayStation 3 was to play Metal Gear 4, and then Metal Gear 5.
Okay.
And since the creative behind it is not working for the company anymore, I probably won't play. If they make another one, I probably won't play that next one. Like it's too good. I got hooked. Back in the old days, they would send out demo discs, with magazines, and sometimes you could get them in other ways too. So I had a friend who had a demo disc, and it had the first very snippet section of Metal Gear Solid for the original PlayStation. And I played that disc until it died.
Wow.
Like I played it and played it and
Wore
played
it
it and
out.
played it and played it and played it and played it. And finally my friend was like, "Do you want to borrow the game?" And I was like, "Dude, you have the game?" And yeah, so I got that and just played the heck out of it.
So did you play? So I'm looking at the all the different games in the Metal Gear franchise. Did you play the original, like 1987?
No, so I'm talking about the Metal Gear Solid games
Okay, so
specifically. So there is a game called Metal Gear. There is a game called, and then there's Metal Gear 2, I think. There's also one called Snake's Revenge. That actually doesn't count.
Doesn't?
No, it does not, because it's not, it was made by like a completely separate company. They did completely crazy things, and like the canon of the game has been destroyed. Completely.
Okay.
But, so if I had to pick one though, I would probably say Metal Gear Solid 3. It's set in the 60s. It's got this really hokey James Bond theme song. Like one of the lines from the song is like I'll eat a python or something. It like, because the subtitle is Snake Eater.
Mm.
And the reason it's called Snake Eater is because in the game you actually have to catch food sometimes and eat it to sustain yourself, and you can catch and eat snakes. And so like the promo for the game was just, I mean, at the time, of course, now I'm like, it's a little cheesy. But at the time I thought it was just hilarious. So they were, the franchise is Metal Gear Solid, and the game is Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. And so the ad was, how do you like your snake? Boiled, fried, we prefer ours, solid. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, but it's just the game and the story. The story is it's a little bit Nolan-esque. If they ever make a Metal Gear Solid movie, I hope Christopher Nolan makes it and directs it, because as bizarre as some of the stuff that goes on in that movie is, it felt grounded. Like, even though you have bosses that are doing ridiculous stuff and doing things that defy the laws of physics, like bouncing bullets. I mean, bullets, if they hit something, they do refract, and there's like, that's real.
Right.
But like, I mean, like doing straight trigonometry, or like you're playing pool to shoot around corners and stuff. That's not how bullets work. But in the game, there's one guy who that is how they work. And then there's like other little quirks like that where, it's just fun stuff, but it felt real-ish.
Okay. I have not played a lot of these games. I tried to kind of get into them. I just never really could get into. I just didn't give it enough of a chance, I don't think. But I do remember, I think I made it to first boss in Metal Gear. It would have been, I guess, Metal Gear.
I think it was Metal Gear Solid.
Metal Gear Solid.
You borrowed it from. I borrowed it from my friend, and then he went. At the time, he had to go to his dad's over the summer, and so I borrowed it for the summer, and then I think you borrowed it for a bit.
That's one where you have to switch the controller around, right?
Yeah, so there's a boss that Psycho Mantis will, read your mind, and he'll take over your controller a little bit. So, the big thing for the PlayStation was the DualShock controller that vibrated. And so he would and I now control your, and that's the weird thing. Like, there's these weird wall breaking moments, or fourth wall breaking moments. And so he would tell you, put your controller on the floor. And so I did. And then he goes, and now I'll move it with my mind. And he just made it vibrate really hard. And then if you wanted to, he would prevent you from using your gun or something like that. So you have to switch your controller port from controller port 1 to 2, because there were no wireless controllers at that time. Or he would read your mind, and by that he meant he would look at your memory card and look for other Konami games like Castlevania, and he would then tell you about your progress in those games. And so if you pulled out your memory card while he was doing that, then he would be like, I see you're very cautious around traps.
That's a real just unique thing to do with a game. It's just it's really creative, and it's just
Yeah.
just doing something that you don't expect or that people hadn't seen.
I think what else really set it apart is that you could choose your own style of playing. And it got more progressively choose your own style of playing as you went. So if you wanted to treat it like a run and gun, you could do that. Like you could run around and just kill everybody. Or you could sneak around and try not get seen, to not fire any shots at all. And in the second game, they started tracking it. And then in the third game, it kind of reached what I would consider its peak, where there's like consequences, not dire ones, but certain things are easier or tougher depending on like how many people you might have killed, or if you tranked everybody and made them pass out. And so it was really, it was very creative, I thought. And now, of course, there's like a bunch of games that do that, but
kind of a pioneer, probably a trendsetter in a lot of ways.
Because it didn't feel obvious either. Like a lot of games, they spell it out for you. I remember playing Deus Ex on PlayStation, or maybe PlayStation 2, and it was very like, how you make your choices is your decision. If you kill everybody, it's up to you. Or sneak around and pick which weapon you want to use, and like they kind of spell it out for you. And in Metal Gear, it was just like, okay, Snake, you have to get in there, and it's a one-man operation, so we couldn't even send you any weapons. You have to find what you can there, so go do it. And then you choose how you do it. You just do it.
They just kind of throw you in it, like, here you go.
Yeah.
Not as much like kind of spelling it out.
And the voice acting in those games is just, it's some of my favorite. Yeah. Straight up.
And that's a whole nother thing we get into with video games, is like how a lot of them are like really, like you're saying, like kind of spell it out for you, or really like predictable, or like on rails. Like you kind of just go from one spot to another and trigger a set piece or a cinematic event, and then it really spells out everything for you with all these button tutorials or whatever, and tells you how to, hey, it looks like you're kind of stuck here, having a little bit of a problem. Why don't you try this? And I was talking about this with my friend John at work. Really interesting dude. He's got one of the things he's really into is video games, and one of the franchises that he would probably say is his all-time favorite is Dark Souls. I don't know if you've heard of Dark Souls.
I haven't played it.
Brutal. Like, these games are not hand-holdy at all.
Yeah.
And I was like scared to play them from what I've heard about them.
Because there's like no instructions on what you're supposed to be doing, or like brutal like Mortal Kombat.
Like, there's no real like introduction necessarily. I mean, there might be like I guess you'd call like a tutorial like combat thing. It's like a third person. You pick like a class, like are you a knight or a thief or a whatever, and you fight monsters and other people and kind of stuff, and it's like you die a lot. And John would like, and that's precisely why he likes this franchise so much, is because it's so frustrating and so difficult and so hard to figure out. But he's like once you finally figure it out, you just it's kind of like the fog clears and you see the game for what it is, or how you should be looking at it. And then it's like one of the best, experiences you'll have playing a video game. So there's multiple Dark Souls games. There's also another game called Bloodborne, and by the same company. And anyway, we can let John tell us about that later if he comes on here. But the guy who created Metal Gear, Hideo Kojima. So he's no longer, like you said, he's not a part of the Metal Gear franchise anymore. But he's made some of his own games, with other companies. And the latest one that just came out is Death Stranding. I don't know if you've heard anything about that.
I've heard some weird stuff about that game. I haven't looked into it much.
I haven't seen a lot about it. I mean, it's
like got some star power in it though, right? It's got like Norman Reedus and Mads Mikkelsen.
Yep.
And I don't know, maybe one or two other.
A lot of memes.
Yeah.
If you're carrying a baby around, he's like a delivery guy or something. And
does that make him a stork?
I don't know. Maybe.
I haven't looked into it too much. I've seen some of the reviews, like the initial kind of. That's how I get my news. I'm like super lazy sometimes, and so like if there's too much detail in the headline, then I won't read the article. or if there's not enough. I don't know what
Ain't
my
nobody got
threshold
time
is.
for that.
Yeah, nobody's got time for that. But it's like based on the titles of articles that I've read, it's kind of bizarre. And
Oh yeah, for sure. What little I've seen of it, I haven't actually seen any of the gameplay, but just kind of what I've heard. Strange. Rick and Morty did a a promo thing for it, where they're doing like a spoof of part of it. So yeah, I think everybody's like doing like spoofs like
yeah,
of this game.
I think it's an easy target because like there's this. So when like Hideo Kojima left Konami, there was like a lot of stuff going around about like the best creative is left and that sort of thing. But you got to remember that creating a video game is not like a one-man operation. It's a huge crew of people, and I think that with Hideo, I think the rest of his people kind of helped rein him in just a little bit. So you get some of that flavor and bizarro stuff that comes out. That's just weird, but it works. In Metal Gear Solid 3, there's a guy who will attack you with bees. Huh. Or you can also, if you see like a beehive, I thought these like little subtle touches are genius, but you can't have a whole game with them where like there's a beehive, so you shoot the beehive, which falls, and the bees then attack the guards that are around it, which chases them away. But like you can't do a whole game that way. You know what I mean? Like that'd be really tough to do.
Or you get old.
Yeah, get old really
like,
fast.
What weird thing?
Or like a guy who will hold bullets between his fingers as he makes a fist, like they're brass knuckles. So when he punches you, they go off. Like it's kind of cool in like a super boss sort of way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work to have a whole game where everybody does that and still expect to be taken seriously.
Yeah, like I haven't heard a lot about Death Stranding. I think some reviews for it have been good. Others are kind of middling, but I haven't read a lot about it. But yeah, Kojima, that's like him. I think that's kind of what you're alluding to. Like that's him.
That's him
unleashed. Kind of make whatever exactly the game that he wants to make.
When it's your company, like nobody can be like, well, I don't think we should do this, because he'd be like, well, but why? You get out. I don't know if he's like that, but
yeah. All right. So now our final quick hit, which hasn't really been that quick, I guess. So now moving on to music. Favorite album. Again, this is hard. This is a hard thing to just pick one, but I think again another nostalgia one is that I picked for my favorite was Blues Travelers 4. And I got that when I was really young. It was, and I got it on tape initially. Yeah. It was clear tape, the cool clear plastic.
Well, yeah, it had to be a cool tape.
Yeah, it wasn't like one of those white plastic ones. I guess I don't know if like those are probably like homemade ones you'd get. Like, give me a pack of like 30 white cassette tapes.
You could get them either way, actually.
Okay.
Like when you bought your own cassettes, you could get them in clear or the white or
black.
Black. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So this one, it was one of my first like non-Christian or non-religious, like or overtly religious. I don't know, the Blues Traveler, sings about religion a lot,
They do, but I've never heard them and been like, I had a spiritual moment.
Yeah, so it's
maybe
not,
you guys have. I don't know.
It's not a stereotypical, in that they're not. Then I certainly don't present it that way. Anyway, I'm rambling. So one of my first non-Christian albums, which was kind of a big deal for me. So, and it's a great album. Just there's Look Around's guitar solo is probably like my favorite part of the album. I guess you could say I have a thing for guitar solos. I don't know who doesn't have a thing for guitar solos.
Without the guitar solo, would you still like Top Gun? I'm not sure you would.
It's a good question. Should try it. Like just like mute it when the music's on and see if I still want to watch the movie. I don't know.
Put like a harmonica solo in there instead.
Yeah. Or have someone like making it with their mouth, like like, yep, that's the same. I like it.
Could be. Brian, I need you to do that for us.
Yep.
Brian's like a musical genius, as far as I'm concerned. So,
but yeah, so that's I would pick that for my favorite, kind of the nostalgia, and it's just a great album. Josh, your favorite?
So I actually do have a solitary answer for this one.
Okay.
No like genre, nothing like that. So mine, also like you, it's kind of like that first musical foray where it's like your own choice. And that's the Simon & Garfunkel Live in Central Park, like greatest hits cassette tape. Also clear.
Very good.
Actually, it was discarded. Somebody left it behind at the place we were working, and I started listening to it because I just was bored. And I was like, this is kind of cool. And of course, I thought it was like super cool because they talk about they're up there performing, and then they stop the show, and they're like, we just want to thank, like the Parks Commissioner for letting us do this concert in Central Park, and Ed Koch, who was the mayor of New York. And we also, a group of guys who doesn't get recognized for doing good deeds very often. The guys who are selling loose joints are giving half of their proceeds to them. I forget where. And I was just like, in my like very young teenage mind, I was like,
I'm such a naughty person. Like, he said joints.
Drugs.
I think he means
alcohols.
I know, like this is my state of mind at the time. Though I was like,
I think he's talking about drugs. I can't actually imagine what else joints would be.
Oh man, that's great.
I don't think I actually sounded like. I should talk to some people. I don't think I sounded like a character from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when I was that age, but I could have.
No.
Meow,
no.
meow, 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 meow.
Meow, 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 meow. Meow, 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 meow. So that's, I was actually looking up, trying to find, like, Henrietta something, maybe? The name of the cat on Mr. Rogers.
Oh, yeah. What is the name of the cat from Mr. Rogers?
I was looking this up earlier because I was trying to find the perfect GIF.
GIF? Did you mean GIF?
GIF?
Biopic?
So I was trying. We were going off the rails in our group chat at work, and we were making like Super Troopers jokes about like meow, like right meow. And then I was like, I swear. Then I started thinking, I'm like meow 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 meow. So I'm like, that's Mr. Rogers, and it's Henrietta. Henrietta Pussycat.
Henrietta Pussycat.
And I actually watched a clip of Henrietta talking to whoever one of the main female characters in Mr. Rogers.
Sure.
The human, not a puppet.
Yeah.
But I'm like, and then I realized I'm like, Henrietta sounds a lot like Mr. Rogers.
It is. It's because it's Mr. Rogers.
Yeah.
It's Fred.
Well,
So like other than the town of Make Believe, which kind of doesn't count, did you know that Mr. Rogers only had one other acting credit to his name besides being himself on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood?
No, I didn't know that.
Yep.
What's that?
I forget the name of his character, but he was in one episode of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, and he was the Reverend's mentor. And like, so the whole episode, the Reverend is running around trying to like build up the church so he can impress his mentor. And then when Mr. Rogers shows up, he's like, the Reverend's name was Timothy. He's like, "Oh, Timothy, don't you know the church isn't about the building? It's about the people and making sure that you're doing what you can to make sure that, their needs are met. I'm so proud of you, Timothy, because you learned a lesson today." I don't know, something like that. And it was fantastic because it was like, he had a different name, but he was still Mr. Rogers.
I mean, yeah, that's like the perfect role for him.
It was.
And Dr. Quinn.
Oh, yeah.
Did your wife watch that show?
Dude, I watched that show.
Okay,
my kids watch that show.
I watched that show.
We have every season. I watched
it back in the day. I remember I would watch it like when it was on like new episodes on TV.
We own this like every season.
Okay, how many seasons?
And the movies, 6, maybe 7, and then there's like 3 like made for TV movies. Also, the village that they used was like an actual it wasn't an actual place, but they did set up buildings that only recently were burned down in some like crazy fire in the last couple of years. Yeah.
Okay.
So you used to be able to visit the Dr. Quinn village. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Quinn was set in like the wild. Oh yeah, man. Like you know what? Look it up on Reddit.
Yep. Or Wikipedia or wherever.
Yeah.
Wherever you get your internet info from. Research.
I just it's a nice thing to have in your back pocket because sometimes when people complain about like gender equality, I'm like, yeah, but what about Dr. Quinn? Medicine woman.
She was doing a hell of a lot more than cooking and birthing babies.
Mm-hmm.
her own babies, having babies.
Right.
I mean, as a doctor, I'm sure she
It's-
delivered quite a few babies.
So that show came out
Nine.
late 80s, early 90s. Yeah, you know. So there's definitely some things in there that as you watch it, it's like a little dated. But it's dated in like a vintage kind of classic way. And it's really good. So it touches a lot on issues at the times, you know. The people in Colorado Springs in the Wild West had a really hard time accepting a female doctor. So like in the show, she's a medicine woman, aka a doctor, and there was only like a small handful of female doctors at that time. And a lot of times they weren't considered real doctors because they had to go to a special school to get their doctorate, which actually is like rooted in the way things were. But they do a lot to talk about like how the Native Americans were treated, and how like they don't blush away necessarily from showing that some Native American tribes were super savage and aggressive, but they kind of also took the side of them anyways, and were like we kind of provoked them. And then there was other tribes where they were like super peaceful and they just wanted to like get along with people. So anyway, it's like a great family friendly show.
Yeah, so I'm like thinking of that one, and then like her love interest, boyfriend, husband,
Joe Lando. This is the actor's name. Sully.
His character, he was a Native American. Was he a Native American guy or
no? He's a white dude who served in the. So this is post Civil War. So gross. So he served in the Civil War. I don't think you find that out until like. Well, anyway. So he, as the show starts, all you really know about him is that he lives like an Indian, Native American. And then you find out why as the show goes on and his character gets fleshed out. I think I'm a sucker for character development. Maybe that's why. Like Metal Gear Solid, you're developing the characters a lot, all of them, and it's kind of crazy. Like there's no the villain, even the villains that are like throwaway villains, still have like development, and you almost are like bummed that they're gone. And then Dr. Quinn does a really great job of developing Dr. Quinn's character, developing the townspeople's character as they adjust to having a female doctor and that sort of thing. And then you find out about Sully. Anyway, it's great, man. I don't know how we got talking about Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, but man, it's so great. That's like classic TV.
Think of that show. Another one I thought of immediately was Touched by an Angel.
Oh, jeez.
I used to watch that show.
Those two kind of go hand in hand. Or
but Touched by an Angel is like really like
it was late 90s, right? Early aughts?
The mid to late 90s, I think.
Yeah.
But that one was just like over the top.
What was like it was like they were trying to remake Michael Landon's Highway to Heaven show. Did you ever watch that?
Maybe when I was younger.
Oh,
I remember
man.
my dad watched it.
Michael Landon with his like long hair and tight jeans.
Mm-hmm.
He was like an angel trying to work his way back up to heaven and do like missions for God or something. It was kind of a bizarre premise for a TV show, but
yeah, I don't remember a lot from Touched by an Angel. I just remember like I can't even remember the name of the actress that was the main character. But yeah, I remember watching that show. I mean, that's also family friendly.
Yeah. Roma Downey as Monica, aka the Angel.
Yes. Roma Downey. Very, very
Justin Timberlake was in that show. Toby Keith?
Wow.
Justin Timberlake was in there as a street performer. Good grief.
Wow. I remember one episode I remember was the premise is kind of coming back to me a little bit. Like she's an angel, but she would be like undercover or something, I think, like playing like a role, like she could be like a cashier at a store or something.
I think, and she
like
would
that,
she would kind of help people who had a problem. So like, I think like the one episode I remember is there was a dad. It was like about spanking your kids, and so this dad was like a huge disciplinarian, and then like she kind of like talks to him and whatever, and then at the end of the episode he like breaks the wooden spoon was like symbolic that he's not gonna like spank his kid anymore, and
Well, that's cool.
because it wasn't like spanking like we think of it. It was, he was like beating his kid with a spoon.
Oh,
Like, it was kind of crossing that
Adrian
line.
Peterson style.
Well,
Football guy.
well,
Also got in trouble for disciplining his children.
stuff.
The episode I remember of Touched by an Angel was where, like, it was like a con man, or somebody was trying to con, like, somebody at Walgreens or something, or a drugstore. They do the thing where they go up to the counter and, they're gonna buy something, and they like flash, like they show them like a $20 bill, and so the cashier sees the $20 bill, but then they actually give them like a $1 bill.
Oh yeah, palm it.
Then,
Yeah.
So they get all this change back, and they didn't actually use their 20. And I think at the beginning, the angel, like, she saw whoever was doing that, and I'm sure later on she convinced them to change their ways or something. But
It was very like
wholesome.
Yeah, kind of Mr. Rogers-y a little bit.
Yeah.
You just talk to people about what they're doing and hope that they make the right choice, kind of a thing.
It ended in 2003, I guess.
Oh, really?
It was on for 9 years, 9 seasons.
Dang, it was on that long? That is crazy.
Another show doing good deeds, Quantum Leap.
Scott Bakula. Yes. I wonder if that's still on Netflix. It was on there briefly, and I was like, Quantum Leap! And then I got distracted, and I didn't go back and watch it, so it's probably gone now. Love that show.
Yeah, that was that, and Star Trek Next Generation was like
Those are
almost
jams.
like appointment viewing for my dad and I.
Yes.
Watch those shows.
Quantum Leap was
MacGyver
like that.
also. We watched MacGyver.
We're huge OG MacGyver fans. Like, my son loves those. My daughter's getting into them. We also own all of those on DVD.
Always been a big MacGyver guy.
Yep. I was. MacGyver, like, those were like my childhood shows. Is like MacGyver and Miami Vice, which I guess doesn't really fit, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. It's like MacGyver and Quantum Leap, both about doing good deeds and not really being violent. And then Miami Vice, where it's like cops who are killing people in every episode.
Yep. But they're doing
I was well-rounded.
good things by getting rid of the bad people.
Yeah, they were getting drugs off the streets.
Seizing all the drug dealers' flashy cars and boats and stuff.
Rolling up their suit jackets for no apparent... Well, it's Florida. That actually does make sense to me now.
That would be a great Halloween costume. Should do the Miami Vice suits.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
that was great. Is there a show you like right now that you're watching? You got a favorite? People are at work around the water cooler and they're like talking about their show, and you're like, what show you gotta watch?
probably the most recent show that I watched, Stranger Things. Not earth-shattering by any.
That's all right. I've seen the first episode.
Of the first season?
Yeah, yes.
Man,
I
you're
know.
behind.
I know.
Stranger Things is great. I like that show. I watched the first episode of Rick and Morty, the new one.
Yeah. Oh, did you? I have not seen that yet.
I DVR'd it, which for whatever reason my TV, the guide, like DirecTV or whatever, labeled it because I'm like, oh crap, I need to record the new season. So it's recorded a bunch of episodes, and it labeled that one as like season 1, like episode 4, and I'm like, oh, it's a rerun. Last week, I'm just like, last Friday, I was like, hey, I'll watch it anyway. And then I'm like, I don't think I've seen this.
It's probably just Dan
This is the new
Harmon
one.
messing with you.
Yeah, could be.
Because like season 3, I think I read they didn't announce when it was coming out, or they did announce it, but it was like on April Fool's Day, so everybody thought they were joking, and then they just did it, and everybody's like, what?
Yeah, so there's that.
Have you watched The Mandalorian?
No,
Oh man,
I don't have Disney Plus.
Well, we might have to remedy that. I think
I mean, I've heard good things. You told me
I know
it's
I'm
good.
biased because it's Star Wars, but I think I would love it even if it wasn't, though.
It was just its own thing.
If it was its own weird thing, I'd be like, this is kind of cool. I'm into it.
I was talking with my, John at work about TV shows to watch, and I was thinking, maybe I should pick up get like a HBO Go subscription or like a trial, or I don't know, get it for like a month, or obviously it would take a really long time to watch all the shows, but like there's that new Watchmen show.
I do want to watch that.
There's, Game of Thrones, obviously.
The Watchmen movie, directed by Zack Snyder, was written by, like, one of the main writers on it was a guy named David Hayter. David Hayter is the voice actor of the main character from the Metal Gear Solid games. Yeah, he's become, like, in like nerd culture, he's like a huge name because of that character. He doesn't do like basically any other voice work though, but he did it because he needed the money. He's like, I needed a job, so I did it, and it just kind of grew into this thing, and now I'm like.
So what? He was a writer.
Yeah.
Did some voice work, and now he's like known for both.
He's probably more known for voicing Solid Snake than he is for like writing Watchmen.
How many games did he?
So he voiced Snake in Metal Gear Solid, Metal Gear Solid 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, Metal Gear Solid 4, and then for an inexplicable reason that actually is completely explicable, they switched to Kiefer Sutherland.
That's right.
Which was just a mistake. They should have stuck with David. I'm sorry, Kiefer. I love you. Well, 24. I like you. Well, you're a good guy. It's whatever. You're a guy. I don't hate you at all.
Did you watch 24?
I watched a little 24. That was intense. Like the little bit that I watched, I was like, this is intense.
Yeah, that's the reason I think why I tried to get into it at the time. So I started they were multiple seasons into it, and I was like, I'll try it out. But I only made it through like 3 episodes, and I'm like, this is too intense. It's like all the bad things that can happen just keep happening, and this is one day,
right? That's the hard thing to get your head around.
The first 3 hours of the day.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't watch much after that.
I love the concept though. It was just, that was super cool. I thought. I just no. I watched it. I watched a little bit. I enjoyed what I watched, but I just couldn't keep going. It was too much. It was too intense. I get weird about shows though, like The Office. I love the gags. I love to watch clips from the show. I love to watch memes, but like I struggle to sit down and watch the show. It makes me so uncomfortable.
Yep.
Which
is like the big draw of it for a lot of people, but it's like I have a problem with that secondhand embarrassment, like even if it's fake,
right?
Just like, ugh.
Like I'm at so I started watching it because I was like, I should do that, and I got to Phyllis's wedding, and like I can't get past it. I just can't keep watching it. I'm so embarrassed for Phyllis because of like what Mike's doing at her wedding that I can't watch it.
Kind of like, did you watch Breaking Bad?
Yeah, I almost finished it.
So you probably would have seen where Skylar does the happy birthday thing.
That was uncomfortable.
To Ted, that was awful.
She's like got that baby in there still. Mr. President.
Yeah, it was just ugh.
Yeah, that was.
And I mean, I don't know. Didn't Ted, like kind of force her to do, or like not force, but like he's like, come on, Skylar, do that.
Well, yeah,
or it was something like she didn't really want to do it.
That's a show that man, parts of that show were hilarious, but I don't think they were supposed to be. Like
maybe the mark of a good,
I get it.
Good showrunner, good writer.
And like the funny stuff was just out of the blue, and then you're like, that was terrible. I can't believe I laughed at that. We'll watch it again.
So I watched the movie, the El Camino.
They did a movie?
Yep. So it's like a continuation of Breaking Bad.
Does it go well? I haven't finished Breaking Bad yet, so.
Like, is it well done, or does it turn out well?
Is it well done? I don't think a movie / show about people making meth should probably end well. I would be really disappointed. I haven't finished the show yet. I think I've got like an episode and a half left.
Okay, so you're on the last season.
Yeah, I think. I'll have to double check.
Are the skinhead Nazi guys in it?
Maybe. I took a hiatus for a while. But like I will be really disappointed if it ends and it's like, and they lived happily ever after. Like, wait, what? He's selling meth.
I don't know. Anything can happen, I guess.
Yeah, it could.
So you should finish that.
I really should.
You should watch El Camino. I really enjoyed El Camino.
Camino.
I mean, the show, I went through the show twice.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do twice through that show.
I did it I actually got, which I think a lot of people did, like I got I got caught up on the show via Netflix,
Mm-hmm.
and then I actually had to wait for like the last season before I could watch it. So I was able to at least watch like the finale like as it happened.
Yeah.
And then a couple years ago I went through the series again, and then they released, they made the movie El Camino. They released it like last month, and I watched that. It was good stuff. Well, let's see. It's getting late here this evening.
Or as Johnny Five said, it's early.
5 is alive. So I suppose we should probably wrap this up for now. I think we figured out that we could probably just sit here and talk about whatever for however long. So I don't think that'll be a problem.
Thanks for listening to us prattle on.
Yes, thanks for listening. We loyal listeners, Josh, thanks for listening.
Nate, thank you for listening.
You're welcome. My pleasure. For now, I'm Nate.
I'm Josh.
We're signing off.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find The Open Eclectic on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and MySpace. Want us to ramble on about something specific or have a comment on what you just heard? Send us an email at theopeneclectic@gmail.com. We now have a Ko-Fi if you feel like supporting the show. That's ko-fi.com/theopeneclectic. Or support the show by leaving us a review. Thanks. We hope you'll join us again next time on The Open Eclectic.